I'm Sarah from Handmade After Dark. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Australia, and welcome to my weekly online class to go. So for anyone who is new to my channel, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining me. So each week on Tuesday nights, I do a live class. We make 3 cards in the class, and for anyone who places an order in my online store of $75 or more, and that's excluding shipping and after any Stampin' Rewards redemption, by the end of Saturday night, I send you the kits to make 2 each of the 3 cards from this week's class. So you'll get all the cardstock, designer series paper, any die cuts that are not part of the featured bundle are included. Any die cuts that are part of the featured bundle, you get the cardstock or designer series paper if that's what's used, and then you'll die cut that yourself from your dies, whether you're using exactly the same as what I am, or if you're using something different if you don't have the one I'm using. So this week's featured bundle is the Lovely Arrangements bundle. So I'll just switch my camera around. So these are the 3 cards for this week. So I've used a mix of colouring techniques for this one. So this one, obviously there's no colouring. I've just stamped and left it blank. Well, in terms of haven't added any additional colouring to it. This one I've used Stampin' Blends, and then this one I've used the blender pen and the ink pad. So the featured bundle is the Lovely Arrangement. So this is the stamp set. So you've got the 2 flowers, the leaves, and then a whole bunch of different sentiments. So you've got a really nice mix of sentiments there. And then the dies, and I'll open it up so you can see them a bit better, but you have dies that cut out each of the stamped images. So you've got the 2 flowers and the leaves. You've got 2 sentiment label dies, 2 separate leaf dies. So these ones are standalone. You don't need to stamp for these ones. And then a couple of sort of background dies that you can use as well. So that is the bundle, and I am extending the bonus Stampin' Rewards offer that I had last week. So I'm essentially extending it till the end of the month, which is essentially the end of this week's class. So anyone who places an order will get bonus Stampin' Rewards added to their account. So make sure you have your you are registered for Stampin' Rewards so that I can gift those extra ones to you. But everyone will get extras, and I do have a target for this month that I'm quite close to reaching, and so I have decided that if I do hit that target, I will add a little extra on top of the extra to everyone who places an order between now and the end of the month. So a little extra bonus for everyone on offer. Hi Dimity, nice to see you. Let me know how the volume is. I have turned it right up before I started, so hopefully that's a little bit better. And if not, I'll keep tweaking things and try to get it a little bit better. So we will start with this one up here. So for this one, I've used Berry Burst for the card base. And so normally not that one, where's my kit? Normally when I colour with Stampin' Blends, particularly in my weekly classes, I tend to go with fairly simple, straightforward colouring, pick one colour and use the light and dark to add a little bit of shade. This time I decided to switch it up a bit and go with something a little bit different, and I'm just trying to, oh there it is. so I've pre-stamped and die cut the flowers. Hi Jane, how are you? Haven't seen you for a bit. It's good to see you. So I'm using the Beautiful Bouquet Designer Series paper. I have stamped these ones in basic black. Now for the leaves, and I'll show you what I did. So I've stamped and die cut these already just so that to save a little bit of time, and it's not going to be super obvious on camera, but I wanted to add a little bit of extra texture to the leaves. So what I did is I first inked up in Old Olive. So make sure it's well inked up. And then get Mossy Meadow and a dauber, and then stamp off. And it doesn't matter too much if your stamping off isn't even, because for this one it doesn't matter, but stamp off, and don't stamp off too hard. You do want to make sure you've still got a reasonable coverage, but you can always top it up with the Mossy Meadow. So pick up the Mossy Meadow with your dauber and then just go around the edges, and you can do as much or as little as you like. Just make sure you've got sort of good coverage where you need it. And then if we stamp that, so you've got a bit more, and I did smudge that a bit, but you get a little bit more shading and difference in the color, so it's a bit paler towards the center because that's been stamped off and hasn't been doesn't have extra ink added to it, a little bit dark around the edges. It's not super obvious on camera, but when you do it and see it really close up, it's a bit more obvious. So that's what I did for the leaves. And if you've only got one ink, you can still do the same thing, just stamp off and then ink around the edges with the same color, and just try and go a little bit darker if you can. But that's what I did for the leaves. For the flowers, I need to bring this back. So for the flowers, I used, and it might seem a bit of an odd combination, but I went with Berry Burst and Calypso Coral. So we're going to start with the light Berry Burst just up at the top, and doesn't have to be perfect, you just want a bit of color at the top. And these two colors do blend in quite well. You just need to need a couple of layers, but it will blend quite nicely. I'm just going to come back and tidy up this one a bit. And so that should be enough there. And then we are just going to go over the whole thing in the light Calypso Coral to start. So it won't look like it's blending much to start with, but we've got to do a few layers. Although now that I think of it, I can't remember if I did the light first and then the dark or the other way, but you can always add extra layers. So we will come back in with the dark Calypso Coral, and we're going to sort of just bring that down. I tend to just follow the lines on the stamp. And then add a bit more anywhere you think you are going to need it. That should be enough to start with at least. And then we will blend all that in. And I probably should have pre-colored one so that you only had to sit and watch one of these, but I didn't. But what I might do is switch the order around for the second one, and we'll see how that looks, because they don't have to be identical, and then we can decide which order we think is better. So I'm just going around a second time, just blending it a bit more, and I may add a bit more of the dark over the top, just to blend it all just a little bit more. So this time I'm adding a bit more, so not just sort of the lines of the image. Just coming all the way in, and there's no right or wrong for this. Just experiment and go with whatever you feel works best and is the look that you want. So if you want darker, go extra layers. If you want it a bit lighter, cut back the layers a bit. And then we are going to come back in with the dark Berry Burst this time. And going over the top. So at least go over the where you had the light Berry Burst, and come down a little further. And then up to you whether you want to add another layer just to blend all that in or not. You don't have to go sort of all the way to the bottom of the flower. You can just, or to the center of it, you can just do the top bit where the Berry Burst ends, and just blend that in and keep the center a bit lighter. And I just put the lid on it for a sec, and then I'm just going to come in with Daffodil Delight for the center. I think I might need to get a new Daffodil Delight. I just put my pre-order in. I may have put 2 pre-orders in. I might need to order some more Daffodil Delight blends. Alright, so that is the first one done. Now we will do the second one. So same thing again, although this time after I've done the Berry Burst, I'm going to come in with the dark Calypso Coral first and see how that goes. Alright, so that's that one. There we are, dark. So I'm just going to do, I'm not going to sort of colour the full thing, just adding some add some strips. Oops. Trying to escape. Come back in. So let's see how this one compares to the other. All right, we might go again with a bit more in the dark. Let's see how that goes. And then we come back in with the light again. We'll see how many layers this one takes. I think we'll go, I think we need a bit more. That's probably, I think that's getting there. We're still going to do the dark. The dark Berry Burst. So let's add that in and see how that one goes. Let's try and fill in any little gaps that I had up at the top from the first layer. Alrighty, and that should be enough of that one. Come back in hopefully for this should be the last layer. The only problem with this method is that eventually it gets to the point where you're not quite sure how many times you've gone around, or if you've gone around and covered everything. I know I've gone around more than once. I'm just trying to blend in anything I feel isn't blended enough for my liking, and to get it a little bit darker in spots. But I think overall, let's just add in, let's see how my brush tip is going for Daffodil Delight. A little bit better than the bullet tip. Alrighty. What do you reckon? First or second one? It's probably kind of hard to tell on camera which one is better. I mean, there's nothing wrong with either of them. But yeah, so that's how I did that. And I'm just going to, because it's going to bug me, I'm just going to add a bit of the color lifter to try and push some of that color back. I can always hide the bits where I've gone outside the lines, depending on how many spots where I've done that. I can always hide them under the other one. Alrighty. So now we can, oh no, let's stamp the sentiment before I forget. So Berry Burst ink for the sentiment. And there it is. So we're going over towards one side. So try and get it, you know, roughly in the center. Over towards one edge. Very nearly ended up with a whole lot of ink on my die cut there, but it's all good. So we will adhere this. So this is just onto some basic white, and you can go either side of this paper. Go with whichever one you like. So this one just has thin border top and bottom, no border at the sides, because it's going, this one is going full length across the card. Let's move those out of the way, and let's just check that I've actually cut the right measurements, which I have, so that's good. So across the center, try and keep even gap top and bottom, or as much as you can. And you can always, if your cardstock's a little bit too long, which does happen, you can just trim the ends off. And then this is going in the center, so this one I'm going to sit flat because we'll pop up some of the flowers, but if you want a bit more height, then by all means pop this one up on dimensionals as well. But for this one, I'm going to keep it flat. And then these are going to sit somewhere around there. And oh, that's right, I did trim these. Now I've got to remember which ones I did where. So I cut these down. Don't worry too much about these stems because they're going to be mostly hidden. Just tidy up the sides if you need to. They may be perfectly fine. And then for this one, I cut which ones? That's right, I kept those ones. So we'll cut this one off. Just trim that down. And just tidy up this one so it's still got that curve to it. Trim that down a bit. So these two individual ones I'm going to stick. They'll go in there. This one's going to go around there, and this one will go about there. Let's just get these a bit more organized so I can stick the leaves down, because you know I like to work out where it's all going before I start sticking everything down. So they'll come back there, that will sit there. I think that's about right. So the leaves we will sit flat, so just add a bit of glue to the backs of those. I'm just going to bring that one down slightly. This one can come up. And I want to try and hide a couple a little bit. So I will I'm going to stick those down afterwards, just because I want to just make sure they're in the right spot. These ones are a bit easier. These ones need to just make sure I get it right. So I'll do those afterwards. Just need to be mindful of where your dimensionals are sitting, so that you can actually get them underneath. But you can always trim the stems back further, because the stems aren't visible for these, so it's not a massive issue. Just also be mindful of where they are in relation to sort of where the flowers sit on top of each other, so that you don't have it up on have one of the dimensionals sitting up on top, just in case. Now I just need to decide which one I want to cover up part of, and I'm going with I'll go with this one. Not that it really matters. Get those off. So that will sit about there, and that one, that will sit. I need to bring this one down ever so slightly. That's better. And then this one can sit there, and then we can add a bit of glue. Just want a bit on there, on that stem there, so it's, make sure it's all stuck down properly. And we'll slide that one in down there. And then all we need to do is add the insert. Get that down. And then, so embellishments, I am using the holographic resin dots. So these are on the last chance list. So they are discounted at the moment. So I'm going to use a couple of the largest ones in the center of the flowers, and then handful of the medium-sized ones. Fold that over, and there we go. So that is the first one. All right, let's move that to the side, bring in the second one. So this is the second one. So this one is a strawberry slush card base. And once I find my kit, so we have some Petunia Pop cardstock. So I've embossed this with the exposed brick embossing folder, and some more strawberry slush, some of the strawberry slush, the DSP from the In Color pack, and then we have just a basic white stylish circles, one of the label die cuts from the bundle. The leaves I have, and this isn't a color I would normally go with for leaves, but I've gone with Lost Lagoon. I was playing around with colors when I was designing these, and just so I have basically, and this is a tip I got from another demo. So in one of my old embellishment cases, I basically have every single color, including the In Colors and basic white, very, very vanilla, everything punched out. And I was playing around with the colors. I knew I was going with strawberry slush, and just playing around with all the different colors, putting different ones together, seeing how they looked. And I found that Strawberry Slush and Lost Lagoon, and I don't know if I can find those pieces now, but I just found that they actually worked really well together. And then I chucked a piece of Petunia Pop in as well, and that worked as well. So I thought, let's give it a go. So there's the Strawberry Slush and Petunia Pop. And then, and it was just one I was just flicking through, and I kind of just threw them all on the table, and just, it's like, okay, let's see what happens and what looks like it might work. I do have Lost Lagoon in here, it's just hiding somewhere, but that is what I did. That is where I came up with this particular color combination. Lost Lagoon is not, I do like Lost Lagoon, I just wouldn't normally use it for leaves, but in this case it worked. Alright, so, and this one I have already coloured one ahead of time to save a bit of time, because this one doesn't take ages, and there is a way you can speed it up. Just depends how much shimmer you want. So for this one, and if you want a very subtle colour, as long as you're using a dark ink, if you get your blender pen and blend the ink straight away, you can actually pull the ink from the stamped image in, and so that is one way of doing it. And you need to do it with darker colours. It does work with Strawberry Slush, but you may want to just add a little extra, but that is one way. So, and this is a fairly standard technique with the blender pens, but if you want to speed it up and you want lots of shimmer, rather than using the blender pen, use your Wink of Stella instead. And you can just sort of brush off all of the ink at the end. It will be fine. I've done it before, including on quite dark colours. So it's absolutely fine. But all I'm going to do, and one thing I should point out for anyone who is not aware, and because I've seen lots of people do it, you don't want to be pressing your blender pen into your ink pad, because then the liquid or the fluid in the blender pen gets into your ink pad, which you don't want. So that is why a lot of people do which is what you can see here, you press the ink pad while it's closed, so you can pick up from there. So that is one way of doing it. The other way is just get a spare acrylic block, pick up some ink. Also means you don't have to leave your ink pad open for as long. And you just pick it up from your ink pad, your makeshift ink pad. So you can absolutely do this with the Wink of Stella. You'll just get, quite a bit of glimmer, depending on how much glimmer is still in your ink pad. And you just want to be mindful with the blender pen that you don't overdo it. So with the Stampin' Blend, you can go over and over and over as many times as you need to without issue. With the blender pen, your cardstock will start to peel if you don't, or if you do too much. So be mindful of that. So you can go, as dark or as light as you want with this. I'm aiming for sort of darker towards the center, lighter towards the edge, apart from bit at the start which is a little darker than I wanted, but that's all right. Can always try and cover that bit up a little bit if we need to. Alrighty. Now just gonna maybe add a little bit more to this one just to make it a slightly more even though it's a lot darker than I wanted, but I'm not going to be able to really lighten a knot without making it all peel, but I'll just try and cover that one up. So once you're done, just wipe off your blender pen, then it's good to go for the next one, and then bring in your Wink of Stella. So I decided to go with this method rather than doing the blending with the Wink of Stella, just so that I didn't have as much glimmer as I would otherwise end up with. Much as I like the glimmer, I didn't want to overdo it. So I think, having said that, I am just going to add a little bit more down towards the bottom of each section. And there we go. And I'll put that one out of the way. Hopefully don't put my hand in it. Alrighty. Oh, I need my lemon lolly. I think I went with the, can't remember if I went light or dark. I'll just go light. Can always add an extra layer. That is one of the big benefits of the blends, is that you don't peel the cardstock if you go extra. Alright. Oh, and we should stamp the sentiment. So, Lost Lagoon ink, once I find it, there it is. And we want it, let me just double check, I can't remember how much is hidden. Okay, it's about centered. Just make sure that's inked up properly. There we go. All right, let's get this together. Okay, so similar to the first card, we've got a thin border on, although this one's a little bit thicker than the previous card, but thin border either side, but not top and bottom. Although this isn't going the full length of the card, it's going the full length of the Petunia Pop. And let's just get that back in place, because I've gone way too high. Let's get that down, that's better. Alright, so that looks good. I'll get that in the center. And yes, Jane, with the first one, when I was trying to design for this one, I wanted a lot of what I was seeing was very similar. I wanted something different, and I saw a card. It was a completely different stamp set. It was one from many, many years ago, but it was sort of done as a bit of a tropical theme, and I sort of just looked at it and thought, I reckon that would work with this stamp set. So I figured I'd try out the colour combo, see how it worked, and see how it looked, and I was like, that actually works. I quite like that. And yes, I do love seeing different takes on the various sets, because sometimes you can get sort of stuck in the habit of using, like if it's a suite, using all the coordinating suite products, and not bringing in other stuff. You sort of tend to gravitate towards the stuff it directly coordinates with and forget about all the other things that it goes very, very well with. So decided to go with something a bit different for that one, and I do like how that one turned out. Alrighty, so once that is down, then we will put the circle in about the middle. And then, so this will sit. I'm just going to check that everything is going to work before I stick anything down. Now, when you do come to stick this one down, this section here that's off to the edge, you want to put a dimensional under there, but use regular adhesive for the rest of it, because it's embossed cardstock, and then you've got the another layer of cardstock and the DSP and the die cut. So I don't know how well you'll be able to see this on camera, but so you can see as I'm holding it there is a bit of a gap under there. So if you use just your flat adhesive, it's going to have a bit of a weird looking dip. So if you use a dimensional there, that'll bring that up to about the height of everything else, and then just flat adhesive for the rest of it. All right, now let's just check that. Just want to make sure everything's going to fit where we want it to, and that we're not going to be covering up the sentiment, but we should be good, especially as I've already made this once or maybe twice and confirmed that it does work. But it's always a good idea to double check just in case, because sometimes very small differences can mean that what you thought was going to work no longer does. So that's all looking good. So one dimensional for that side, so we'll do this one first. And then just regular adhesive there. So the edge of this you want sort of as close to the edge of the Petunia Pop cardstock as you can get, and that should give you room to fit everything. And so I want this one up here because I want to cover some of that. It was a bit darker than the rest and darker than I wanted. It won't completely cover, but it will be enough. And then we can just put these ones down. So that can sit about there. And this one is going up about there. Okay, and then we will add some dimensionals. And I'll do one at a time because I just want to make sure it's going to sit properly. Okay. And just turn it so that the bit that I want to cover up somewhat is in a position to be covered up. And then that will sit about there. So that one there, I don't want dimensionals because it's going to be resting on something that is already popped up on dimensionals. But we will just add just a little bit of glue there, just in case. You know I like everything to stick properly. All right. That can go there. And then what do we need to do? We need the insert. And we need to get all the dimensional backings off, at least off the desk and onto the floor. Get that down, and then I used a combination of embellishments for this one. So I've got some of the Strawberry Slush and Pretty in Pink gems. These are also on the last chance list. And then I used some of the, and this is a new packet that I had to open up, the 25 to 27 in color flat pearl. So I used a large and a medium for this one just because, and then we add in some of these. So these ones are also discounted because they are last chance. And then we want, so I'm going with the Strawberry Slush ones for this, the darker ones down the bottom, and I think that is enough for that. And there is the second card. So that one's got a little bit of shimmer to it, and you can always add more. Alrighty, last one. So this one is Secret Sea for the card base, and the designer series paper from the which is part of the suite that this bundle is from the coordinating suite for this one. And then we are also going to use some of the cloud cover textured ribbon for this. So let's do the stamping first. We just need to stamp the sentiment, and we need Secret Sea for this one, and we want to stamp over towards the right hand side, otherwise it will end up being covered. And let me just check that I haven't massively over inked that. Bit too heavy handed on the ink there, even though it looks like, feels like one end doesn't have quite enough, but it's probably got more than enough. It just feels that way because the other end has far too much, but that's all good. Alrighty, so that is that done. That's out of the way. Let's put that over there. Now for this one, a little bit different, nothing massive, but so what I did with this one, rather than adding a cloud cover border, I decided to use the ribbon to create the border. So, and it can be a little bit fiddly, but it's not that fiddly. So we need 2 pieces, and you want to make sure they're long enough to wrap around. So we don't need that just yet. We're going to do that after we've done this first bit. So depending on how you want to do it, essentially what we're going to do is create a border with the ribbon. So what I might do, I think this will work better than what I did in my first one when I was figuring it all out, but we shall see. This may or may not work. I'm going to add the tear and tape to the ends of the paper. Might help if I kept it in view of the camera. Alright, so I'm going to just do one at a time. So take that off, and we want to make sure we've got a bit of a border. So you can either add the ribbon to the cardstock or come in this way, because you've got a bit of a better view of how much of a border you've got. And we just need to tuck that under, because that was a little bit too long, but that's all right. So tuck that under, that's fine, and then we'll do the same on the other side. Again, we should tuck that under first. Get the ribbon as straight as you can. This one's a bit wonky, but we'll make it work. And then just try and get as, you know, as close to the same amount of border as the first one. So I'm just going to adjust that slightly. Thankfully you do have, this one is quite easy to sort of lift off and adjust if you need to. And I'm actually going to completely redo that because I needed a little bit bigger border, because that's what I've got on the first one. So that is, it's not quite, but I think probably close enough. Let's just adjust a tiny bit more. There we go. That looks better. Alrighty, so then we're going to adhere that to the cardstock, and you can either use tear and tape for the ribbon or the liquid glue. So I'm going to use tear and tape on the ribbon. And we'll just add a bit more at the ends because it's not quite long enough. And the last one, there we go. And I think I might take the backings off before I add the adhesive, just so I'm not getting my hands covered in adhesive as I try to get the backings off. There we go. And then just a bit of liquid glue in the middle. You can always add extra to the ribbon for good measure if you need to. Now you do make sure when you're doing this, don't have grid paper or anything like that underneath, because if the adhesive from that gets stuck, not a massive issue tearing the back of the ribbon because it's going to be hidden, but it's a bit of a pain. If you've got your silicone mat handy, that is ideal. And it also just depends how hard you press down on the ribbon. So just adjust that, and then you want to wrap it around as firmly as you can, because this is sort of quite wide ribbon and it can slide a bit, so you want it as firm as you can. And there you go, you've got a textured cloud cover border for that piece of DSP, and it's also a good way to use up ribbon if you've got some that needs using up. And then we will adhere to the cloud cover, and my glue is getting blocked. There we go. And I will clear out my glue while I'm at it, and then we will adhere that to the card front. Alrighty, let's get that down. Okay, so that's that. Then so this is going to sit about there, and we will just check that everything is going to sit nicely, because you want to make sure that your flowers don't go over the score line. So we want them sitting about there. So I think that's fine. We can stick this one down. You can pop this one up on dimensionals if you want, or you can sit it flat. I'm going with dimensionals for this one. pop that over on the right hand side, and then now for this one I'm actually going to stick all the flowers down first and then I'll do the leaves, just because they're quite, in terms of getting them underneath, they're a bit smaller, so it's a bit easier with the dimensionals. So I'm fine with doing it that way for these. Now I just need to be mindful, any part that is going to sit up on here, we don't want dimensionals. So if I'm going to have that there, so those parts need to not have dimensionals, and hopefully I can actually get it. Wait, trying to escape. And we'll just add a little bit of glue there, just so that it's got something to stick to. So that's going to sit about there. That should be fine. And then that one will sit about there. This one will sit underneath. This one can have dimensionals all over. Okay. So we will pop that one down about there, and then this one, so we'll go dimensional in the middle, and then we probably want, if we have it sitting about there, dimensionals over here. No, screw it, let's just chuck that one on, and that's probably enough. Maybe one just over there, because the rest of it is going to be sitting up. So we'll just add just a little bit of glue to the sections that are going to be sitting on top of something else, and we'll just get that aligned as we originally wanted. There we go. And then it's just a matter of deciding where you want your leaves to sit. I should have used adhesive sheets for the leaves, but surprise, surprise, I didn't. But that's okay. We'll make it work. And that one I think can sit. Just need to be mindful of not going over the edge. And but you can kind of, when you put these down, you can kind of squish them together a bit if you need to sort of adjust the placement of them. We'll get that under there, and I'm actually going to press those in a little closer. Oops. And I actually, there we go, that's all fixed, all good. You didn't see that, it's all good. Alright, so we want one sitting under there. one thing to be aware of with these particular ones is that they, because of the design of the die cut, they can be a little bit more fragile, so you do want to be careful with these ones. And then just got a couple more to go. I reckon that one can sit. Actually, let's just see what's going to work. You can stick those there, or if we go, let's go with those up the top. Just want to get that in behind the flower, and they're actually, those ones are actually overlapping now, but that's actually quite like that, so you do have a bit more flexibility with these to adjust the exact positioning, particularly for the doubles, so you don't have to have the same distance between them as how they come out. You can just play around just as you like. And then that last one goes there. You do, if you are using the liquid glue as I am, you do want to be careful though, just because the die does cut, sort of cuts the line, so if you've got too much glue, it is going to come out those gaps, so just be mindful of that. And then all that is left for this one is add the insert, flip it back over, and I'm using the Opal Rounds assortment for this one, and I'm using a mix of the colours, so I'm using the large dark blue for the flower centres, and then a couple of the clearish ones. Actually, I did go with three of those. Oops. And there we go. So that is the final card. So let me just bring everything back in. Alrighty, so these are the 3 cards for this week's class, and remember you have until the end of Saturday night to get your orders in, and there will be bonus Stampin' Rewards as well this week, so just make sure you are registered for Stampin' Rewards, and then if I do happen to reach my goal by the end of the month, and I'm not that far off, I will then add even more bonus Stampin' Rewards to everyone who has ordered this week. Alrighty, so next week is Barbecue Master. So change from all the flowers and leaves and everything that we've had over the past few weeks, if not more. So Barbecue Master next week. But until then, thank you for watching. If you are watching on YouTube, if you like the cards, please remember to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I do appreciate it. Thank you, Jane. Thank you for watching. You too, Dimity. I will see you soon. Until next time.